Potentially a hot take, but I think that CrossFit style weightlifting actually gets way less credit than it deserves. I've even spoken to some elite level weightlifters that very much value the style of CrossFit weightlifting, tight time constraints, using things like EMOM, slightly higher volume methodology, as well as lifting under a bit more fatigue. Even they are in the same boat of thinking that there is massive benefits to it. So we're clear what actually makes up CrossFit style weightlifting. We've got tight time constraints and repeated efforts where we kind of force execution over overthinking. We've got cycled reps where there's a lot more eccentrics involved, and that's a good opportunity to actually physiologically adapt from that as well. We'll touch on that in a little bit. And then we've got lifting under a bit more fatigue, whether that's from the volume of that workout that you are actually doing, or if it is from a previous part of a workout where you're then going into build to heavy complex or something like that, with the fatigue from that workout. One of the main pushbacks I hear is that there's just too much fatigue and way too much volume, when in reality, when we look at what is actually going wrong, we're normally referring to injuries, right? And when an injury comes about, it's because we've exceeded the tolerance of a joint, of a muscle, of a ligament, of a tendon, whatever it may be. We've just exceeded the tolerance of it. It's not the movement itself that has caused it, it's probably just the application within the workout. It's important to remember the proficiency needed to not only move well within Olympic weightlifting, but to move well under fatigue is a complete different level of proficiency. And even though people think that they have this adequate level of proficiency, more often than not, in my experience, they are way under, and they just need to be willing to focus on that technique to then truly get the benefits from it. Even where I've got clients which are purely focused on Olympic weightlifting competitions and just lifting as heavy as possible, I will even use elements of this CrossFit style weightlifting for them. Specifically when we've gone through a period of time when we're really focusing on things with a lot of constraints, lots of pauses, lots of time under tension, things that really require maybe a bit more time within the reviewing process between your set. When you're resting, you might need a bit more time, and everything is just becoming a thought process. Sometimes that needs to be flipped on its head, and it's then a really good chance just to implement, focus on implementing and nothing else. And that's when those tighter time constraints, whether it's every 90 seconds or even every minute, can be really effective, to not overthink things and just perform the movement. Specific physiological benefits of cycling the barbell are there to be had as well. Specifically when I look at heavy power snatches, heavy power cleans, I notice people's ability to maintain thoracic extension of the upper back is so much better when they can cycle a barbell nicely. And that helps to build strength in reserve, again, for those people which are purely focusing on Olympic weightlifting and maybe don't even need the benefit of being able to cycle a heavy barbell like in a CrossFit competition, which you very much might be able to one day. Even just to have that strength in reserve is incredibly beneficial. Then you've got things like timing. In the eccentric of, say, a power clean or a power snatch, the ability to accurately push your hips back into flexion means that you have to have a brilliant understanding of those positions. And that means when you're then going through other parts of your training, your overall accuracy and quality in those positions is that much more elevated because you have such a good body awareness. Then comes timing, obviously slightly intertwined with the previous as well. But when we look at things like cycling push jerks overhead, the timing is, again, another opportunity to really develop an above average understanding of how you're moving and how you still need to focus on certain elements to allow you to fully extend, but to also receive the bar in this different way, again, potentially exceeding your previous capacity for what you could do with that barbell. Now, it can be argued that even within CrossFit, heavy barbell cycling doesn't really come up that much, and I definitely agree with that. I think that people potentially do overvalue it from the sport-specific sense. That being said, it does not change my take that CrossFit style weightlifting is still incredibly valuable for people across the board, whether you're doing CrossFit or whether you're just doing weightlifting. It's important to remember that fatigue and lifting under fatigue is part of the sport within CrossFit, but then it becomes important to define the definition between CrossFit, the sport, and CrossFit, the methodology. So the extent at which someone might be able to still utilize some CrossFit weightlifting methodology and utilize a bit of the way CrossFit athletes train, they may not go to the same extent if their goals do not complement that. And that's completely fine. That is properly utilizing the methodology. But again, people will always look at the elite CrossFit Games athletes, see what they're doing under the duress of competition, and try to relate that to the everyday person, when you're completely misguiding people. You're comparing apples and oranges. With that competition does come a level of danger, but everyone seems to accept it in other sports, contact sports like rugby, American football, ice hockey. Is part of the game that you're going to get injured. But then as soon as a CrossFit athlete gets injured, because it's so intertwined with gym bro culture, the optimization of everything, training for longevity, people again are sitting in glass houses but more than willing to throw stones. And again, it's a really important opportunity to define CrossFit methodology from CrossFit, the sport and the competition side of it. Where I can see the point of some critics is on a return on investment basis. If I was a gym owner and my brand was more so associated with functional fitness, I would seriously consider whether I had the coaching staff to be able to properly coach the athletes or the members in the gym to be able to perform such technical lifts to a level where they could then perform them under fatigue. And I completely understand that the time required to do that might simply not be worth it on a financial basis for some gym owners, some coaching providers. But then it becomes important for them to realize that that's the reason that they're doing it, rather than pointing the finger and just trying to put it down because it's not something they do or have adopted, when in reality it's probably down to those practical reasons as opposed to the methodology and there actually being a problem with that. Now then, my closing thesis: the problem is not the movement, the problem is how it's applied and the workout that it's prescribed in. And people unfortunately not understanding the level of proficiency needed to not only move well, but to be able to move well under such high levels of fatigue, and understanding that skill and fatigue relationship. Very often people that think they are good enough to do X, Y, and Z do have a long way to go, but that is completely fine. There is nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing unsafe about that, provided they're coached in a correct and safe manner. All they need to do is have a bit of humility about their mental approach with it, and understand that maybe they are a little way off where they thought they were. If you want to find out a bit more about how to work with me one-to-one, there's going to be information on that in the description. And if you are enjoying these longer form videos, drop me a comment, a like, subscribe. All of that stuff is greatly appreciated, as I'm very much in the infancy of this YouTube channel. But I will see you in the next one.